special guest tonight is about to release her 4th studio album. She began her musical career in the 90s and won fans with her hit single, Fool For You. Here she is now, the lovely Monique Brumby. Thank you for joining us tonight, Monique.
Caitlin, what can I say? Everyone's here. There's a hair double working on the floor. My hair double.
That's fantastic.
I know, I thought it was just me and Prince, but no.
No. It's a bit of fun tonight.
It is a bit of fun. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Yeah, no worries at all. I love to talk to someone who's so passionate about 90s music.
Oh, thanks, Monique.
Brilliant.
Well, what inspired you in the beginning to become a singer-songwriter? Is that a bit Ray Martin?
No, not at all. I was inspired by just music itself. I just love playing music. I love writing songs. When I learned to play the guitar, I was about 15. And for me, that opened up a whole world of possibilities of what I could do with my life. And so I started writing original songs at about the age of 15, 16. And it just went on from there. I had fantastic music teachers at my school that I was at. And that sort of encouraged me to sort of go on and write my own music. So
Yeah. Well, could you tell us about your upbringing? You're from Tasmania. So were there many opportunities for you musically in Tassie growing up?
Yeah, there was lots of sessions to do a bit of banjo work. You know, songs around the campfire. Tassie's an awesome place to start because everything seems really tangible and, you know, you feel like you can kind of make a start there without other people really noticing on a broad scale. So I started as a busker.
Yeah, right.
And I used to busk down at Salamanca Market.
Oh,
and the first ever press release that came out in the 90s was Busker from the Wharves of Hobart. And so every interview that I did for the first album that I put out was, so you were a busker on the Wharves of Hobart. And it made me sound like I was a fishmonger or something.
Hopefully you've dropped that now, that they've stopped that.
That kind of, yeah, got edited out of the bio pretty quickly after the first album. But no, look, Tassie's a great place to sort of start your musical career because a lot of inspiration for my music does come from the landscape and the people. You know, my first album is called Thylacine, which is a Tasmanian tiger. Yeah. And the music that I write now, a lot of it I write when I go back down to Tasmania. So for me, it's a place of real inspiration and I feel connected to things outside of myself when I'm there.
Right. Well, after that, you moved to Melbourne, of course. So what was the live music scene like in the 90s in Melbourne?
It was mixed and varied, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, people talk about the boom of the 80s, you know, with the live music scene. There was lots of work around. For me, I kind of felt like, you know, there were great venues and there were venues that were sort of opened up that weren't so fantastic. Some venues have closed down now, like the Continental in Paran. Now for me, that was one of my favourite Melbourne live music venues because, you know, there was a real buzz backstage and I did a lot of shows there. I suppose the 90s was a time for me in live music, Caitlin, where I met a lot of different people and I really started forming really close bonds with a lot of musicians in the industry.
Yeah.
So for me, the scene was vibrant, and I think it still is, but it just changes slightly. Like it shifts slightly. Like venues that once were, you know, like the Continental and so forth, and now, you know, there's now, you know, a lot more venues that have great PAs, great sound systems. People like going to them, and I think as an artist that's what you really look for, to play in venues that people really like going to.
Yeah. And
that are really good for sound.
Definitely. Well, that's what it's like. You know, there's one thing recording albums, but it's all about the live thing really for most musicians. So do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me playing live and recording albums, they're two different beasts. They're different creatures. I mean, the approach that I take in the studio in the way that I play is not too dissimilar to the live thing, but it's slightly different because, you know, live I use a dynamic microphone, everything's kind of louder, you know, I've got the drummer kind of closer to me and everything's being played at once, and So you try to capture what you do live. All the great things about what you do live, you try to capture in the studio.
Yeah.
So as my career's gone on and as I've made more records, I've become more aware of how to recreate that live sound, you know, on an album. And that's just come through sheer trial and error, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was able to capture that on this album. You know, I've just released my 4th album. You know, we went in and we cut it live, all the band members playing together, and then we overdubbed, you know, instruments on top of that. I might have gone in and I redid the vocals because we're all in one room. So we couldn't really keep the vocal takes because the drums were spilling through, but it created a really good foundation for a live recording.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what about the lyrical content of your new album, Skeleton's Poker? What does it mean to you, this new album?
Well, it's funny because, first of all, the album title is quite obscure. Skeleton's Polka came from a book that I was reading, and it was about a maid that came into a room who was carrying a tray of crockery, and she was rattling the crockery, and it made this sort of, you know, cluttery kind of sound, and the man in the book said, "Oh, here comes Skeleton's Polka." And I thought, and I flipped the page in the book, and then suddenly a light globe went off, and I flicked back to the page and thought, you know, that really sums up my music because it's so, you know, it's very diverse, and I don't really write ever in one style. You know, you could sort of put it under the banner of pop rock, but it's not really. It's kind of lyrical. You know, there's lots of stories. I mean, the first song on the album is about growing up in a small town, and I actually wrote that down in Hobart. And I wrote it after I went back to my school reunion, which was absolutely traumatic. I don't know, have you been to a school reunion?
No, but I came from a small town as well, so I'm dreading the day it's approaching.
Absolutely. So, you know, all the things about, you know, the human condition and the things, and it doesn't really matter where you're from, you know, like people are people, and there's a lot of stories about people on this record. There's stories about my journey through life, and that encompasses, you know, observations of what people go through. The first single is a song called They're Still Alive, and that's a song that I wrote after watching a documentary series about people living with, day in, day out, living with and caring for someone with dementia. And I saw this documentary series, and it was a whole bunch of people talking about their loved one who had developed this illness. And I found it so profoundly moving that, you know, you could spend your entire life with a person, you know, maybe 50 years or more being married to a person, and then all of a sudden one day they don't even remember your name. Yet, in all of that, they care, they look after this person, they care for them. And I thought that was really an issue and a topic really worth writing about, because there are a lot of people in this situation. And so that's one of the songs on the album as well. And then there are songs about being out at sea, being lost at sea, and being able to sort of find your way back again. And the ocean plays a big role in my lyrical writing. It sort of almost subconsciously sort of goes in and almost is a very ground. I think for most people it's quite grounding. Do you find the ocean quite grounding?
Oh, definitely. I live in Williamstown by the beach, and I couldn't live away from it anymore. So
there you go. I live in Williamstown by the beach. Yep.
And I didn't used to. I lived away from the water for a long time, so I know what you're saying. Definitely.
And how did you feel different when you lived away from the ocean?
Yes. Yeah. There'd be 2 years and you wouldn't see the ocean, so I know exactly what you're saying.
Absolutely. And then you see the ocean, and it just has this profound effect on you.
It
does for me, because I mean, growing up in Tasmania, which is where I'm from, you know, you're surrounded by ocean.
That's
and
right.
family members.
That's right, exactly. It's all a bit of a tidal wave, isn't it?
And everyone's family.
That's
in
right.
Tasmania.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Monique, and you should be so proud of this new album. I've had it on.
Thank you.
I've had it on rotation for the last 2 weeks, so congratulations.
Thanks for having me on the show, Caitlin.
Oh no, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Monique. And for more info on Monique's new album and tour dates, please go to www.moniquebrumby.com.au. And Monique will be launching her new album, Skeletons Poker, on Saturday the 10th of April at the Workers Club at 51 Brunswick Street, Fitzroy at 9 p.m. And still to come, Monique will perform in the studio.